There we go. Yes. All right. So enough of me. Obviously, it's getting punchy after lunch here, but we have 4 more exciting chat talks this afternoon. Leading off with Doug Black. And if you didn't hear me a few minutes ago, I'll kind of ramble off again, but Doug is an awesome supporter of the community. He is an ExpressionEngine Conference Silver Partner. He's an ExpressionEngine partner. He has add-ons through Triple Nerd Score that I know many of you guys have used. He just did a talk not too long ago at a meetup about bones and bringing headless power to ExpressionEngine CMS, which is amazing. He's written EEU articles. He did an awesome beginner walkthrough not too long ago for ExpressionEngine University. He's in the forums. He's in the Slack. He is everywhere, working behind the scenes for many teams in the community. I know he's even worked on core. He was a big part of getting pro out the door last year. So I cannot say enough good words about Doug and Triple Nord Score, or about Doug just as a person either. One of the most genuine and kind people you will ever meet. Cares about his community, his not only online community, but also his community where he lives. Gives back all the time. So yes, Doug is an amazing man, an amazing guy to know, and a good friend. And today he's going to talk to us about setting up ExpressionEngine for success. So I'm excited to hear this. Always excited what he brings. Always learn new things from him. So Doug, I'm going to hop on off, and then just let me know if you need anything, or I'll be back at Q&A time. So
awesome.
The floor is yours, sir.
Appreciate that. I will probably never, ever be able to beat that intro for Andy. So thank you. I'm going to replay that video many, many times over. So thank you for that intro. Again, my name is Doug. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Opportunity to share with you and to serve. And yeah, we're going to talk about setting up EE for success. ExpressionEngine is literally my most favorite content management system. I literally brag about it to everyone. I'm like, everyone who has a website, I'm just like, oh, you're on WordPress. That sucks. And I get to talk about EE constantly. One of the big challenges with getting started with ExpressionEngine is it's a wide open blue ocean, and there's so many places to start. We're going to talk a little bit about our standard Triple Nerd Score setup. Basically, when somebody says, I want to build a website, they give us all their stuff, and we say, cool, we're going to build with EE. And we have a very, very standard way of laying out EE so that we can have a site up and running to begin building on in usually around an hour. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about me, very, very little about that. Really, we're going to talk more about what we'll do, and then we're going to build this site from scratch. We're not going to get all the way through. I'm going to give you really high-level kind of view of this, but we're going to do our best to get us as close to a ready-to-build site as possible. So real quick, a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm Doug. I run Triple Nerd Score. Great team of developers, content writers, project manager, a whole bunch of people helping bring digital, your digital day to day, all around the world. So very grateful for the team that I get to serve with. You can find me on Twitter at Doug Black Jr. I'm on the EE Slack all the time. There's a special page for EEConf people, triplenerdscore.net/EEConf. We're giving away a year of Hey Check It and a copy of all of our add-ons, every single one of them. There's like 12 of them, plus like some that we have never released. So just sign up on the forum on there and get free stuff maybe. So what we're going to talk about today, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a site from scratch in ExpressionEngine. So whether you're a beginner, you've only built out a couple of sites, maybe you've been using EE for years and you want to explore some other ideas, that's really who this talk is for and what we're going to talk through. And a lot of this is going to be how we do it. It's not necessarily prescriptive, as in this is, you must do this all the time, but it's descriptive. So take what works. Take what works in your context. Give it a try, what you see here. And then if it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, or if there's a better way, let us know. Like I told my daughter the other day at soccer practice, I was watching her. She's a goalie, and I was watching another goalie, and I'm like, that's how you do it. Take what you see in others, steal it, and make it your own. And she's like, Dad, you can't steal. I'm telling you here, steal everything I'm giving you today. So first, we're going to walk through how we configure a site. Basically, we're going to start the site from scratch, and then we're going to take our configuration and blow it up a little bit. Then we're going to bring in our templates. We have a standard set of templates that we bring into every site that just gives a basic skeleton for us to work off of. We're going to talk about our resources. So we're not ending up building our CSS or JavaScript, in a CSS or JS file. We're using Sass, and we're using, modern JavaScript to do this. We have a very simple setup that we use to do that. And then some next steps. And these will probably be kind of more bullet points, outgoing email, standard add-ons, all that. So with that, let's build. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to stop sharing entirely. I'm going to share the whole of my screen. And so I will admit, I have never been more afraid than when I do live coding on a talk. So watch me be petrified. I'm going to move this window up. There we go. You got my screen here, yes? Okay, it looks like it's only, hold on 1 second. It looks like it's only sharing half my screen. I don't know why. So I may have to kind of inceptionize you a little bit while I get sharing going. Whoops. All right. There we go. Okay. All right. So what I have here on my screen is my terminal. I've got my text editor open. I've got my basic EE site open. The only thing I've added in here is my local valet driver because I'm using Laravel Valet in order to serve my site. And I have my EEConf site is refusing to connect, which is perfect. That's where we want to start. I've already created a database, which I've got to get the name for right here. Great. Awesome. Okay. Oh, thanks, Tom. Letting me know you're seeing the whole screen. That was weird. Sorry, I'm looking at it on my phone as well and watching. Okay. So the very first thing we do, even before we hit the config, and this would be the only part I would say is prescriptive. Please, as often as you can do this, is move all of your stuff, all of your system stuff out of WebRoot. And we do this by creating a public folder. We move all of this jazz into public. And even just by doing that, now I'm going to get, hold on, I had to restart my computer. Let me sudo systemctl stop. And restart Valet. And then I'll have a site. There's my site. Okay. Great. Now I have an error. This is fantastic. We love new errors. So when we move stuff out of WebRoot, we do this mostly for security. This way, people can only access what's in my public directory, which I want them to. I don't want anyone getting my database credentials by being able to access my system folder. So the other thing that this does is really give us a whole lot cleaner code here. All right, so the only thing I need to change inside of my admin file, instead of telling it to look in the current directory, which is 1.system, I need to say 2 dots, which means go back a directory and then look in system. So we do that, and here as well. Oh, look at that. Brand new error. That's what we want. Okay. Admin.php. Now let's just get our install going here. I'm going to grab my database name. I'm doing this locally, so I'm using root. Please do not make your root password default or anything. And let me get my email and the preset password. So this is just straight setup, nothing crazy here. Great. And then I can log in. And I have officially got my ExpressionEngine site up and going. So if I go to eeconf-talk.test, I says that I've been installed. I have no templates yet. That is all good and good to go. All right. So now the very first thing we're going to do here real quick is just name our site. I'm sorry, I got to get rid of the EE Pro banner. Definitely buy EE Pro. It's well worth the money. EEConf site. Not being paid to say that. I just mean it. All right, so we got our site name. That's kind of the only thing we'll do inside of here for right now. All right, so let's talk about our config setup. So typically what we do, if you ever looked at the config file in here, you know, out of the box, it's got, you know, your database info, your app version, your session keys, which it generates now in EE6, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for adding that. And then some other little variables. We often in our flow use Git to manage our code that's going in and out. And one of the worst things you could ever do is Git commit your credentials. So for example, I'm just here on local setup, and that's totally fine. I'm using my root. Oh, look, they started mowing the lawn directly as I was giving a talk. That's okay. The worst thing you could do is share your root or share your credentials in Git. It's where it's very bad for security. Things could get really out of hand really quickly. So this is kind of where we start to pull apart this config very, very quick. So I have my site here that we were managing. I also have a number of files here that I got ready kind of for this talk, so we didn't have to use a lot of time, but I'll explain what I'm doing. All right. So the very first thing that we'll do inside of this config file is create a new file inside of here called config.local.php. And what we're going to do is, I'm just going to get rid of those comments. We're going to pull the database information out of there, actually in the encryption keys. So we are only left with that. So now I'm going to go back to my site. So let's save here. There we go. Everything is broken again. That's totally fine. What I'm going to do is pull in a piece of code here, our config.local path. All this code does really is check to see if there's a config.local file. And if so, it requires it. And it just pulls it in. And so that way, when I go to, when I look in my Git setup and everything, I'm actually ignoring this config.local file right here. And so that way, I've got a config file that's just an app version and a site license key. You could probably even pull that out if you really needed to. But all my database credentials are safe and secure, and they're not exposed to the public. They're only put directly on the server here. So even with that line, or even with that piece of code there, our site's back. There we go. And I highly recommend, whether it's using an environment file, I know there are some add-ons out there that can very easily kind of do the same thing. If you want like the real quick version of that, do this. Just put it outside and Git ignore the file where you've got your credentials for. All right, the next thing we always do is I'm going to copy and paste our DD function. So because we do a lot inside of add-ons and everything, we have a function called DD that we add to basically all of our sites, unless it's a very quick brochure site. And all this is dump and die. It does the same as die var dump, within your PHP code. This is basically just a shortcut so that if you're working through a piece of PHP, something in your add-on that you're trying to figure out, adding this DD is a really quick and lazy way to say, hey, just show me what I did wrong here. And you can dump your variables and that kind of thing. We always add it because we tend to do more custom work there. Definitely an optional step, but this function is here for you to steal. So the next thing we do inside of our config.local is we just have a number of variables that we set within our config. We're always setting our base URL, our base path, whether we're showing debug information, as well as a number of our image paths. Because we took that information, or we took the core of the files and put them in that public directory, we want to make sure that we know where to show our images and everything. So we add in this whole slew of code here. It looks like a lot. We're going to do like a whole GitHub repo for you so you can kind of see and follow along with this. But all we're going to do here is change our base URL from whatever it was that I copied and pasted before to our current directory. And so we have our base URL set with where we're currently serving the site. And then our base path, which is, this is the path on my local computer, where to do this. And all this again tells it to do is saying, if you're looking for a URL, start with this. If you're looking for a file on the server, start with this. EE does a good portion of this behind the scenes. However, this gives you much more granular control. And I think it comes in way handier when you're adding file directories and that kind of thing. You're able just to use those base URL and base path variables real easy. So we're going to close our config now. So our config file went to 2 files, lots and lots of lines in there, and very, very, very little right here, which is nice because this will get git committed. This will not. And so we're never exposing our database credentials. We're kind of keeping things as local to the setup as possible. This is great too, especially if you're using on your local setup, some sort of mail dumping service like a Mailtrap, or if you are, or in production, you want to use a service like Mailgun or something like that. You're able to kind of separate those out into your config files without having to worry about managing that in multiple places. All right. So here's our site. Not much here. Oh, I broke it all. Excellent. What did I do? EEConf talk. Oh, I can't spell. It's EEConf talk. There we go. Site's back. Okay. Isn't it fun to break stuff? All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we are going to hit our default site here. This is our standard set of templates that we're going to copy and paste in here. And I'll walk us through this so you can kind of see what we're doing. So user, system user, templates. In here, we currently have nothing. Fine. I pasted that there. As you can see, it still has nothing. However, I need to go to my templates to get EE to kind of sync through and say, okay, I see these templates. These are what I'm looking for. All right, and you can see now we have our core index here. That's kind of serving as our home. We have a layout folder and errors folder. And so let me actually walk you through the templates. Now our default site. All right, so we add 4 folders to every project we do. The first is we start out with our layout folder, and this serves as our core layouts. Layouts are a really simple way in EE to make sure that your code is similar across all the things. There's nothing worse than getting into a project and having to change something in 12 different places because it's been done in 12 different ways. Layouts allow you to do that in one way. And so we have our layout core, which looks like this. And this will serve basically the entirety of our site. In here, we have a couple of partials, which I'll show you in a second. a couple of layout variables, our SEO data, head extra, and our contents. And then within our body, we have our header, our footer, which pretty much stay the same across all the sites, and then our scripts tag. All right. The next thing we do inside of our partials are all of these partials that we've seen here. So let's go through them one by one. First, we have our styles. This is basically where we will put our CSS and where we'll call it into our site. So we kind of keep this as separate as possible, just in case we need to change a file. We're not changing it in 1,000 places. If we need to add some sort of third-party CSS, we can do it right there. Same with scripts. As you can see, these both come preloaded for right now, and I'll explain that in a minute. Our header file, which is blank, our footer file, which is blank, our analytics file, which is blank, and then our favicon file. So our favicon is usually something we end up creating in a hurry. There is this fantastic site called favicongenerator.org, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is a free service where you can take a logo, drop it in, get all of this amazing code, and we're just going to then download our generated favicon. We're going to extract all of that into our sites folder, ecomp talk, public, and let's just make a favicon folder. Boom, there's that. And now we're going to go back and we're going to change all these hrefs to favicon and our content for our Microsoft users. Awesome. And now when we go to our site, we need to set our template as core, don't we? So let's go to our core group, make default group, save template group. And now we have a nice and empty site from our core layouts. But it is not displaying anything. That's okay. So we're going to close our core. Let me close our config files since we don't need those anymore. Don't need our notes. Don't need that. All right. So there's our favicon file we created. Now the core layout that we use, core file that we use for almost everything is going to be right here in this core index file. Here we go. Make sure it's loading. I don't know why it's not displaying anything. This is the fun of coding live, isn't it? Make sure I actually set it. Yep, make default group or index. All right, we'll circle back around to that. All right, so we always create this core file, which will serve kind of as our index for the site. Inside of this, we'll either create our page builder using fluid files or fluid fields, or something like blocks. Or, we'll just throw in our quick index page and pull in the actual data. And the only other folder that we always create here is what we call the errors folder. Inside of layout.group. Stephen coming in clutch. Thank you. Good catch. So the only other folder we always create for everything is our errors.group, and this will serve as our 404 page. Basically, this is where we catch anything bad that's happened. We have our standard kind of 404 starter here. One thing I've learned is I can't name this a number, so I always name it, spell it out, 4-0-4. And then inside of our templates, we go to our template settings, and we set our 404 page to errors 404. Save our settings, and now if we try etalk/gerbil, you lost. That I did. There we go. All right. So that's how we start all of our template layouts. We start with these 4 folders and then really build on from here, because this gives us a bare bones skeleton for us to do whatever we want with. All right. The next fun part that we do is we will add in our resources here. Standard CSS JavaScript starter files that we're going to take our resources file. I'm going to put them in our root. And so inside of here, 2 folders, CSS and JavaScript. And this serves to stand as our files that we build from, not our built files, but our actual files that we build from. We tend to use Tailwind for a lot of stuff nowadays, so we kind of keep that standard, and we just have a blank JavaScript file. All right, so the other thing I need here are my package.json, my Tailwind files, and my Webpack files. We tend to use Laravel Mix in order to build these files in a really quick and easy way. All I've done was copied and pasted those over. Those anymore. So inside of our package.json file is just what we need to get Laravel Mix running. This will build all of our files from our build files here, so we can use CSS, Sass, Post CSS. Again, since we're using Tailwind and it's really built off of Post CSS, we end up doing a lot of that here. Whenever I'm using Post CSS, I'm also using Post CSS nested because I like Sass, and I wish Post CSS would just do nested. Yeah, and then a couple other files. So what we need to do here, I'll show you more of this in a second. Let's go to sites, econf talk. Make this bigger so you can see it on the screen. We're going to run npm install. That will get Laravel Mix installing the initial files we need. And then what we're going to run here is npm run watch. And what this allows us to do then, as you can see, I have my resources file here that I've made changes to. If I go into public now, it's automatically created my main.css file. It's automatically created my main.js file. And so now, even with that main.css, I can go into here and see that my initial styles are applying. So let's examine this just a smidge more before we move on here, because this is kind of the the base of our entire setup. Inside of our Webpack file, we have a very basic mix.js, which just looks at this resources.js.main, /main.js, and builds it into our public file or public folder. And then same thing here. It looks, it uses post CSS to parse through our resources CSS main.css, and then creates that in our public folder. And that way we can have everything ready to build. So if I want to do a change where I go into my resources main.css, I can say background red, and it will make everything aggressively red for me. Since I have that npm run watch that's constantly moving and constantly checking for my changes here, try and see if I can show you. There you go. Compiled in less than a second, faster than I can change. Let's do it again so you can see it. More, and there's our blue. Now let me get rid of that because that is too aggressively colorful. And so what that allows us to do is use the speed of this build process in order to create in order to spin up swoops. As I choke and die on camera, this allows us to create sites massively quick, so we can get everything going nice and fast. All right, Andy, I'm going to throw it back to you for a second.
Hello. Doug's going to get some water there, I think. Like I said in the chat there, be sure to post any questions you have for Doug in the Q&A. So it's always cool to see how different people build websites with ExpressionEngine. I think that's one of the great things about ExpressionEngine too, is just how flexible it is. I've seen some very convoluted ways to build sites. I've seen some very easy ways to build sites. So, but the importance is that you take the time to think through, and I like how Doug's approaching this with kind of a system to building sites in ExpressionEngine. It helps your team too, right? Like if you have a system that's documented and everybody knows what's happening, as a developer and agency, that allows you to spend less time architecting and building the initial setup for the site, but then also maintenance later. I can't tell you when I was in the agency world, I think we had 90 some ExpressionEngine websites that I walked into that I was handed and told that I had to maintain. And they were built 90 different ways. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't fun walking into those different setups and trying to figure out how on earth some of those sites were working. So, and Paul is continuing to make jokes. So, so Oliver, you asked a question, or you made a statement more of in the Q&A about good practice for EE standard build, or even included in EE docs. And we've actually been talking about that internally, about kind of adding that to the docs as far as a walkthrough of best practices for building a site and how we think we should do it. And it looks like Doug is trying to come back.
There we go.
All right.
The frog in my throat tried to take me out, Paul, but not today. All right. Yes. So questions. I'm sorry, Andy.
No, you're good. We were just chatting there. So your screen, you want to go ahead and share your screen again?
No, we can move on to the, I'll close out by saying that's kind of like where we end with the resources part. From there, is the sky's the limit with EE. We'll go and change in our mail servers. We'll add our page builder channel and fields. We'll add in all sorts of goodies. Our standard add-ons that we use. I don't want to give, I'll give everyone free promo. Pretty much our standards nowadays, we're using SEO Lite 2 for everything. We use blocks, Catman, JCOG image, all of those kind of things. And then from there, the sky's the limit. So thank you for the opportunity to share today.
Awesome, Doug. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how much of that you heard while you were away, but I was just talking about, how important I found it to kind of standardize the way you build your sites, because ExpressionEngine does have a lot of flexibility, and different ways work best for different agencies, or what your niche is, or what you're typically building. But as you know, because I know you've done some work with DeBose that I used to work with, I was saying how I walked into 90 sites that I was told to maintain, and they were built 90 different ways. And so they're, having a consistent pattern and documenting how you build your sites, I think just really helps out with maintaining those sites over the years. Because, coming through and having to spend a day or more just trying to figure out how on a site works is not a lot of fun there. So
yeah, not at all.
Yeah. So I really appreciate your approach here to kind of standardizing how you build, and then also how clean that is. So you don't have it's one thing to standardize it, but if you standardize it with a very convoluted method, that doesn't really help you out or your future you at all. I like to talk to the future you, or at least pretend I'm the future me talking to me now and yelling at me for all these things I'm doing. So sometimes that helps. So Robin says, I so love it when there's logical consistency to site structure. I'm sure she does. If you want to know all the things not to do when building an ExpressionEngine site, I'm sure you can talk to Robin and all the support that she goes through, and she has to figure out. And sometimes she just she throws up the flag and says, "Team, please help me figure out how on earth this person built this site." So Q&A, we'll just go down the list here. Josh asked, "Is that Pop OS?" And I think it is, right? Because you're on a System 76. Yep.
I'm on a System 76 computer. Good eye. Good catch.
Yes. Making us all jealous. So Oliver, I kind of spoke to this a second ago. Oliver said, "Seems like Doug's methods would be good practice for E standard build or even included in E docs." So yes. And that's one thing that we'd like to do. If you guys have noticed, we made a few updates to the docs, and we've got some more in the pipeline, just to make them a little bit more friendly, easier to use, easier to find information. We've talked internally about moving the docs away from just a kind of a technical reference to actually having more of a, this is the standard way to do stuff. So hopefully we're going to move that direction and add some clarity in the docs and help people with stuff like this. So, Eric said, "How do you really feel about SAS?" So
I love it, and I get mad at I love Tailwind too, but I get mad at Tailwind every single time I have to use Post CSS. So, but Post CSS nested is a fantastic node package that allows you to keep that nesting there. So it has a lot of great features there.
Yes. Eric just said, "Wait, did you install Laravel goodies with Node?"
Laravel Mix specifically is a Node package that's used to, it's built off of Webpack, but it builds with a very standard build process, similar to what you'd see in Laravel. And so what this setup does is just pull that into the EE world. I'd done an EEU article about some of that build process as well. So I'll make sure to drop a link in the chat there.
Awesome. Nikki asked, "What do you do with the staging production server config.php files? Does it still use a config.local PHP with credentials specific to the servers?"
Yeah, so we've done this a couple ways. Either we will use, we also have another file. Sometimes we'll use a config.env where we have everything using the get-env function, get-env function.
Oh, wait, is Doug broke for everybody too? Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait. Yeah, I thought I lost you.
I thought my thing did a thing. So apparently I don't know. I think everybody else.
It was Nikki's question. It just hit too hard with me. So.
Yeah, all right. So let's take it from the top.
So we have two ways that we do it. Sometimes we just use config.local, just because it's easy for us to manage that. Just toss it up on the server. No problems, no issues. Other times we've used a config.env file. Basically, we say if there's no config.local, look for config.env, which has the same config system overrides that we typically use, but they use the get-env function, or we pull in .env in Composer or something in order to get variables from a .env file.
Cool. And I think, let's see. So Carl just asked, is it worth using PHP request to get the base URL paths so it works for multi-environment?
I tend to lean away from that, specifically because if we have, if we're moving a site from like a dev environment, where like a build environment that's specific to dev, like we're replacing a site or something, we don't want to just kind of use a request in order to manage some of that. The other thing too is that I found that that's not always reliable. And especially if we have something that's using the command line, but still needs a URL to, create like an email or something, there is no request there. So it's a combination of that. We tend to stay far, far away from that and tend to lean to hard coding that. No guesswork.
Yeah. All right. And so everybody wants to know, what is growing on the wall behind you? Is that live or is that?
Great question. No, this is not live.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my camera just died too. Dang it. Okay. So, there it goes. Good. I'm not going to move too fast. Maybe that was the problem. The wall is not alive. The wall is all fake. Inside of the little arrow garden is 4 jalapeno plants and a tomato plant. And then you can't see it, but just off camera is my little sunflower here underneath the grow lights. There was a bunch of basil out there too, but we transplanted that. And then right behind me is a money tree.
Nice.
Yeah, which besides my kids is the longest thing I've ever kept alive.
That's awesome. All right. Any other questions for Doug? He is a wealth of knowledge. You guys are missing your chance. Here it is. In 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll let you off the hook, Doug. Doug, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me share and
die on camera in front of many of you. But appreciate the opportunity. So again, I'm on the EE Slack pretty constantly. I'm at Twitter on Twitter at Doug Black JR. Feel free to stop by, ask me anything. Happy to help.
Awesome.